Hello, I'm Chris Scargill and welcome to Series 4 of Tourism Business Chat. I'll be chatting again to prominent leaders in the sector about what life in tourism looks like in 2023 and how innovation, funding and technology impacts their businesses, the background of their career journeys and much, much more. I've been working with tourism-based businesses for many years and I have a real passion for the sector, as do my guests. This week, my special guest is Mary Sparrow, co-owner of Hippersons Boatyard, a working boatyard which is also a unique self-catering holiday destination in Beccles, with quirky houseboats and secret glamping hideaways floating on the Broads National Park. Mary lived permanently on a boat in London, and we will hear how her life changed when she came to East Anglia, agreeing for her and her husband to buy a boatyard, but only on the condition she did not become part of the tourism sector. And then we fast forward to today, where she finds herself running an award-winning tourism business and is chair of Visit the Broads. We will hear again how health challenges force some of those changes, and that at times things have to go wrong so they can be put right, and how constantly asking, why do we do that, has been a mantra for change. How negativity can be challenged into positivity, and how potentially being lazy creates opportunities to find an easier way to do things. So there's clearly a lot to talk about. So let's go. Hello Mary, how are you?
Hello Chris, I'm fine. How are you?
I'm very, very well. I'm very, very well. And so here we are, the Tuesday after the Coronation Bank holiday, 2 bank holidays in 8 days. How are customers reacting to the plethora of holiday that they're getting at the moment? I mean, it must be impacting their spending capacity.
Well, I think it's been quite a mixed reaction because there's a lot of bank holidays on the back of an Easter holiday and people have got to manage their spend a lot better. And also with the coronation being on, a lot of people watching the coronation, there were street parties, there was big lunch, there was all sorts. So there's a lot of things competing for people to do stuff on the bank holiday weekend and people's free time. And I think people are having to think about what money they want to spend and when they want to spend it. And 3 bank holidays in a month, that's a lot of bank holidays and a lot of money to find. So we've had decent bookings on the days when the sun has shone, but on the days when it's been raining, it's not been so great for people going out. But the accommodation's been full every weekend. So it's kind of a mixed bag at the moment.
Yeah. And it's still early in the season and lots of positivity around, I think, for the season picking up going forward. I mean, are you feeling that positivity?
Yeah, I mean, when we're looking at our bookings on the accommodation, there's a really good level of bookings coming through. And so, we're feeling happy about that. And it's looking, I think once we get sort of towards the end of May, the May half term, it kind of really picks up and will take itself on a little bit of a roll then. So I'm thinking that it will still be a good season and it will be another good year for tourism.
So talking about East Anglia and what you've found attractive to come to East Anglia, there you were, a teacher and a successful teacher, a top career in teaching, living on a boat, I do believe. And so how does a teacher living on a barge find their way to Norfolk and find their way into the tourism sector?
Well, I was living in a house in a regular flat in London when I met Simon, my husband, and I'd been teaching for quite some time by then. And he was working in IT, but he kind of fell out of love with IT a little bit. So he had the opportunity to take voluntary redundancy. And he said, do you think I should do that? And I said, yeah, because you're getting really miserable working in IT. You're quite miserable to be married to, quite boring. So yes, do take some time out. And because I just got a headship, we thought, well, we could live on my head teacher salary and then see what we want to do. And then I fell pregnant at the same time. So then we were like, right, he's going to take redundancy and we've got a little baby. This is all kicking off. It's quite exciting. And he said what he wanted to do is have some time to think about what he'd like to do if he wasn't in IT, or maybe retrain and go back in a different aspect of IT. But he said what he'd really like to do is run a boatyard. And I was like, okay, that's good. Because by then we were living on our barge full time. Because when I met him, he was living on a boat. And we looked at boatyards that were for sale around the United Kingdom and Europe, and they're all kind of millions and billions of pounds. So I said, well, that's nice, but you might have to rethink. So he carried on thinking, and he stayed at home, and he was looking after Nate some of the time, and Nate was having childcare some time. And then I came home one day and he said, I found a mooring. And I was like, oh, okay. He said, we need to go and look at this boatyard in Beccles. So I said, oh, right, where's Beccles? He said, It's near, it's near Norwich. It's in Suffolk. He said, in fact, it's not too far from your mother. I went, that's interesting. So we decided to come and have a look at it and see what we would get for our money in East Anglia. We'd looked at moorings on the Thames in London, and we were basically going to have to buy, a £1 million house that we then have to rent out, just have the mooring. And we needed to find somewhere that we could have a permanent mooring so Nate could go to school, registered as a person who was not of no fixed abode, because as boat dwellers, we're of no fixed abode, and all our posts went to a post office box, which was all right. I still got DBS cleared for my headship on a post office address, but would be quite good if he was on a permanent residential mooring. So we came and had a look at the boatyard, and it was really, really lovely. So we thought, well, this is nice. I like this. It was better than the mooring we looked at in York, which was a lovely city, but in the winter you have to row for an hour or longer or a mile to get to the boat because it floods so much. And I'm like, I'm not getting up and rowing at 6 a.m. So we liked the boatyard, and then we went in and looked at Beccles, and Beccles was a really lovely town.
It is.
So then we're like, well, it's on the right side of the country for going to Europe. Beccles is beautiful. Boatyard is nice. There is no reason not to buy the boatyard. Simon said, I really, really would like to buy it. I said, okay, well, you can buy the boatyard and you carry on and knock yourself out and have a great time, and we can move the boat there, and that'll be fabulous. Happy with that. But just don't expect me to come and work in the tourism business with you. Whatever you do, I'm not working in the holiday industry. I don't want to do that, and I'm not going to do it. So we can buy the boatyard and you can run it, and that's that. So that's what we did.
And that was your promise to yourself. So how long was it before your promise to yourself that you weren't going to work in tourism turned out to be false, and tourism became your life?
Well, it's funny because life is what happens while you're busy making other plans, and you can plan, and we plan lots of things, but other things come along and they just take it off course, and you have to learn to go with it. So before we bought the boatyard, well, the day that we bought the boatyard was the day that I found out I had cancer for the first time. So it was like, well, 1 out of 2 ain't bad. We got the boatyard, but I've got cancer. So we dealt with that, got through that, and then moved down this way. And then I managed to find a job as a head teacher in a local school. So that was all good. I wasn't having to commute down to London and stay away Monday through Friday, which wasn't particularly nice. And then that was another stressful school. I made a career out of working in difficult schools and challenging circumstances. And there was a particularly really stressful Ofsted. And I just thought after the Ofsted, I don't quite feel quite right. This doesn't feel right. So I went back to see the oncologist, and they were like, yeah, you've got your cancer back. So then the oncologist said to me, look, basically, you can carry on working in education, you can carry doing what you're doing, but what more evidence do you need that stress is a trigger for cancer for you? So you can carry on doing that. You can come back, work in education, have cancer again. I don't know how many times your body's going to put up with the amount of chemo we're throwing at it. Or you can stop what you're doing and you can enjoy the rest of the life with your husband and your son. So when someone says something that plainly to you, then you've got a choice to make, haven't you? And to me, it was a very simple choice. I really preferred spending time with my husband and son. So I had to stop teaching. And then I was like, what am I going to do if I'm not teaching? So Simon said, well, why don't you look around the boatyard, spend a year, see what you can do. Let's take some time. And if after a year, we're really doing each other's head in, living and working together in the same place, then one of us will need to find work. And if you can't add any value to the boatyard, then, you'll have to think about something else to do. But just take a year, take a breath and get well properly. So that's what we did. And now 5 years later, I'm still working in the boatyard. And so Simon, we're still married and we're still happily married. And the boatyard's doing really well. So, yeah, it worked out okay. So in some ways, cancer was a catalyst for change.
Catalyst to change, and education's loss was definitely tourism's gain. So that's a positive that's been brought to East Anglia from that. And so the boatyard that was operating at the time that you bought, what did it look like at the time, and how does it look like now, and what changes did you then bring in as a result of your thought processes?
Well, it was a very different boatyard. And when we bought the boatyard, the guys told us that the significant amount of the income came from boat repair and a very small amount came from tourism, to sort of just add a little bit of extra value, prop it up, give them a bit of extra income. Simon had spent years working in the IT industry. So one of the first things that he did was put in software for counting, and he started to track the money. And then at the end of 12 months, we looked at the money, and surprise, surprise, it was something like 80% of the business income came from tourism and more leisure moorings, and less than 20% actually came from boat repair work. So it was completely the opposite way round. And yet the focus of the business had always been like 20% on the tourism and 80% on the boat repair work. So we had a little bit of a, are we doing something wrong with the boat repair work? Is it something we're doing there? Should we be trying to get more of that? And then I started to work in the business at that point, and I said, well, why don't I look at the tourism stuff and you look at the boat repair stuff, and let's see what happens. Mm-hmm. And we stayed in one of the houseboats then, because our boat, because we live on a boat, it has to come out of the water every 7 years to have a survey and the hull done, and we have a European safety certificate redone. So the boat came out of the water and we stayed in one of the houseboats in the summer. And I just said to Simon, Jesus, I know I'm having chemo, but this place is awful. I said, it's, you know, it's making me feel really ill. And I didn't feel that bad to start with. I said, we can't carry on renting these out like this. They're awful. So we set about revamping them and changing them within the envelope that we had and just remodeling them. And then over time, we've added floating pods, we've added paddlecraft, we've got our staff trained up with Welcome Host Gold, we've had them trained up as instructors for water activities, and we really have put a massive focus on the tourism. And what we've realised is it's the tourism that enables us to keep the traditional boat building skills alive. Without the tourism, there wouldn't be anything.
Mm. And those transitions that you've brought about, the enhancements and everything else, I would imagine it's changed. The pricing, I guess, has changed. Maybe the customers you were attracting originally have changed. What are those dynamics, and how have the customers reacted to the changes you've brought in?
Well, there's a lot of things that went wrong, which made things go really well. And I think that's kind of basically good change. Is like, change happens when things don't work out. If things work out really well, good change doesn't happen. You've got to have things go wrong to make them right for positive change. So we got our first floating pod, and the agent we were with wouldn't sell the floating pod at the price we wanted, because they said it wasn't worth the price we wanted. And we were like, well, we think it is. So we tried to put it on a well-known online booking site, and it was just a catastrophe. It was a real catastrophe. So we decided this isn't working out so well. So we decided to put our own booking system in for taking direct bookings, and we put our own pricing structure in. And I'd been working with a business mentor, and she helped me with it. And we'd sort of, the agent that we had been working with said, well, you're not going to get the price that you're asking for. And I thought, well, I am, because some people have already paid it. And if you're not going to get the price, well, that's fine. And we'd gone through a whole period of watching the guests that were coming in, and some of the guests that we had that came in old styley weren't necessarily the guests that you want on a family, peaceful, orientated campsite. You know, people turning up and start drinking at 9:30 in the morning, sitting by the car, isn't exactly the clientele we were really after, especially as we live on site as well, and we've got a young son. So we created customer avatars, and we specifically targeted the type of customer that we wanted, and we priced accordingly to attract the people that we wanted, really. And it worked. And having our own booking system worked really well. I mean, it just all came together. And it made a huge difference. And so now, you know, we have customers who come year after year. I had someone arrive yesterday. It's like their 8th visit in 5 years, and they're almost like friends. My son's running up saying hello and giving them a big hug and pleased to see them come back. And people really appreciate their own little bit of privacy. So we've made them all really nice inside. We've made them brighter. We've opened them out. We've put floor to ceiling windows in. We've put better facilities in. We've got free Wi-Fi across the board. We've got recycling. We've added a lot of environmental stuff and a lot of good products. We've become a member of Green Tourism because that's really important to us. And we've just really changed I think the customers we used to have were people who were coming for a long weekend away, who wanted to sit and drink and have fun, which is fine, more of your stag party, hen party.
Yeah.
And now we have family groups, people who come for wildlife, people who come for the fishing, people who come for some time off after they've looked after their children's children all summer, and just a whole variety of different people. So it's, it's changed, and it's positive change. It's really good. We really like it, and it has a really lovely feel. And the sort of people we've attracted as well are people who have additional spend, and they'll go into Beccles and they'll have a meal in Beccles, and they'll go and buy things in Beccles, and they'll go to Southwold and they'll buy some Adnams wine, and they'll go and buy some Beccles beer from a local craft brewery. They'll go to all the different businesses locally and they'll spend, and that's a different sort of customer to who we've had before. So not only have we felt the difference, but I think the local visitor economy, some of the local restaurants and cafes have said it's made a real difference. They're always kind of curious. How are your bookings looking this year? Are they looking good? How's it going to be in the summer? Because it has an impact on how their summer's going to be. That's quite good, really.
Their secondary spend is bringing custom to the rest of the area as well, which is great. And again, part of it was the fact that you looked at it and said, well, actually, I'm not prepared to stay in this. I wouldn't necessarily pay to stay in this. So as a result of the enhancement and the improvements you made, you've then gone, well, I want people to respect the effort I've put in and respect the work that we've done, and therefore pay for it accordingly. But I guess at the lower price points that you were operating at originally, were you full, or was occupation or occupancy levels already in the low 30s, 40s, and 50s?
No, we weren't full, and that was one of the things. And I think because we were houseboats on the Broads, on some of the sites we were on, it's like you had to really dig in to find a houseboat rather than the boat. And so we such a small business compared to some of the bigger businesses. Like we've got 6 units, and someone like Centre Parts has got billions. So we're not going to be high on an agent's list. So people would have to work hard. Our occupancy levels were about high 40s, early 50s at best, right. And it wasn't great. And so when I started looking at the business, I was like, well, the big thing I know is that the occupancy levels are rubbish. It's the school summer holidays and we're not full. So maybe that's something that I should look at. And that's when I went on my big learning curve about marketing and Facebook and targeting and booking direct and new agents. And also it's a massive learning curve. It was huge, but it was a good one. And it's made a real difference because now our occupancy levels last year were like 92% for across the whole season, which we're really happy with.
Yeah. So another change in your fairly short career in tourism. And in that short period of tourism, let me just jump to where we are today. The newbie to tourism, the person who didn't want to be involved in tourism, has now found themselves chair of Visit the Broads. So how did that transition take place? That must have surprised you as much as moving into tourism did.
Well, it did really. I can still remember walking around the car park here having a conversation with Ruth Knight, because when I first stopped teaching, I thought, what am I going to do? And I went to a meeting locally about the Waveney Valley. So she said, would you like to come be a director? And I said, what do you have to do? Should have come to a meeting once a month. I was like, all right then. Simon said, well, you might as well. You might learn something. So I went along. And then I'd been going along to the meetings for about, 6 months, a year. And Ruth rang me up and said, what about being vice chair? And I was like, what, me, a vice chair? I said, there's loads of people who know a lot more than I know on the board. What do you want me for? She said, no, we all think you could bring something new, something different. And I was like, okay, right. And I think because I don't come from a tourism background and I've always been curious, I like to know stuff. I've always pushed myself at doing different things. I did my headship training. I did my master's in education. I've done all sorts of, I always like to know more and find out more. So I was thought, okay. And what I've brought to it is I start asking why do we do that? Well, what's the point of that? What's that for? And people look at me like, what is this woman asking? I'd be like, well, I know you all understand it, but it's making no sense to me whatsoever. So then they'd have to explain it. So they're probably thinking, God, what have we brought onto the board? But then Ruth rang me and said, I was thinking maybe you could be chair. And I was going, you joking? why would it? I said, and then again, I was like, there are better people to be chair. She goes, no, 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 no. So I said, all right, well, I'll stay as vice chair with you for 6 months. And then at the end of that time, we'll talk with everybody. And if everyone thinks I'd be all right to be chair, then okay, I'll give it a go. I said, but I don't know anywhere near as much because, Ruth's lived and breathed tourism all her life. Lots of other directors have been on the Broads for forever.
Yes.
So I don't want to purport to like knowing stuff and being the big I am. She said, no, honestly, people would be really happy. So I was like, okay. So that was it. We had a meeting. I said, Ruth's kindly asked me if I'd like to be chair, but does anyone else want to be it? And they all said no. So it was me.
They all took one step back. So
now I know why.
Yeah, exactly. But you're enjoying that role.
Yeah, no, I am. And it's really helped me learn, and it's helped me develop, and it's helped me meet people and understand. And it's put me in arenas where I can ask questions where people are happy to answer the questions as well, which is great. And I think I've made a difference. And I think that, I'm helping by empowering other people to be able to do things and supporting them and asking the questions and, saying, why do we do that? Why don't we do something different? And I think that people are happy. Certainly they've said that they were happy for me to continue being chair this year because you stand for 2 years and then you're all re-elected. And I said, does anyone else want to do it? And they said, no, you're good. You carry on. You're doing. And Daniel Twait said, no, I'm quite happy. You're doing a great job. You carry on. I said, thanks very much, Daniel.
Yeah, keep doing what you're doing, but you haven't been keeping doing what you're doing. I mean, you've brought in some changes, and electronic gadgets are in everybody's hands. And I think with the Visit the Broads, you have actually now got your own app that everyone can look at, download, and effectively do their own tour and their own planning before they come.
Yeah, no, we have, and I think it's worked really well because what a lot of people don't know is in a previous life when I did my degree, I did a dual degree in drama and computing. So I do understand quite a lot about technology as well as having been a drama teacher. And I did a whole lot about networking and software engineering and systems analysis. So systems analysis is a really good transferable skill because you sort of go from top down, right down and keep going, keep asking why, why, till you get right to the bottom layer. So there was things that we did, and COVID was great. Not that it was great, but it was great in making us question, well, why are we doing this? So paper, you weren't meant to give paper out during COVID. So every year, the person who does all the administration for Visit the Broads would spend quite a bit of time chasing around people to get them to pay for adverts to enable us to afford to run a print copy of a small paper book that we give out with people. But you can't track whether that's been successful. You can't, you hope it's on the customer journey, but you can't see conversion rates because it's just in someone's hand. They put it in their handbag. It definitely raises awareness, but does it actually convert? Nobody knows. And so in the first lockdown, when we were ready to open, we knew we couldn't give out the paper copy. So we changed it into a PDF and sent the PDF link out to everybody with all the members in it. So then you could track it a little bit more. But obviously PDFs, people are always looking for the easiest solution. That a lot of people like me, I'm always lazy. If there's an easier way to do something, I'm happy to do it. So with the PDF, you've got to scroll down all the pages, and that's, some people don't want to be scrolling for hours. So then we sort of purported the idea of, developing an app for Visit the Broads with the Visit the Broads members on it, that we could just then, once you made it, then each year you just update it, and it just takes live from the website. So it updates the information really easily, and making it part of the members' fee that we pay, because we were looking at, what do members get for being in Visit the Broads? Is it just that they can advertise and pay more money to advertise in a print copy? What do we give? So we created the app because our vice chair, Adam, was able to, he led on that really well and created this great app, put everybody's information on it. And now we've got a good way of tracking how many hits we send to people, really raising awareness, pushing it through. And last year, the app went live for the first time. This year, the app was ready to go live at the beginning of the season. We've got a great big social media campaign that we're running to really push the app. And people are liking the app. And then because we've worked with the Broads Authority, I know some people still like paper, and that's fine. I like reading a book. I don't think I'm ever going to be able to switch to a Kindle. I love reading a book. But we've been working with the Broads Authority, with Robin communications team, and we came to the conclusion that maybe because Visit the Broads is the marketing side of the Broads National Park, we could try and put something into the broadcaster. So last year they trialled giving us 8 pages of the broadcaster, which is just about Visit the Broads members, and it has suggestions of days where you can go. So we've got the app that we push out and the social media posts where we're pushing out to bring people into the Broads. And then when people are on the Broads, they all get a copy of the broadcaster anyway. And we've got this insertion in it, which is the Visit the Broads page full of the Broads Authority businesses who are members of it that promotes it. And that's gone down really well with customers and businesses alike. And everybody gets mentioned, everybody's part of it. So we're all working together to really promote the businesses who are all working, talking to each other. And we're using new technology and, still got a little bit of old, but much better, because instead of having 3 or 4 different publications, which is a lot of paper and a lot of eco stuff going wrong there, it's one publication that everybody is involved in, and people have only got to take one newspaper away, which is great.
Yeah. And it is that multimedia, because people want to do research before they come. And one of the things that you've facilitated with your boatyard, and indeed your floating pods and everything else, is YouTube. And so you actually have embraced social media and technology for your own business. How has that sort of caught the interest of people who are then coming to buy from you, either through the boatyard or through a holiday break?
Well, it's quite good, because, when I was a head teacher, I was like, social media is the devil, and it was awful, and it caused me no end of problems. And then I moved into tourism, and it was like, oh no, social media is great. We all love social media. I was like, really? So I had to rethink my whole approach to all of this stuff. And then in COVID, no one could come. And I went on a lot of those courses that were online that people run from across the east of England. And they were saying, just set yourself up a YouTube channel and put some stuff up there. And I was like, what do you mean? What? Put up what? They said, well, people can't get out to see sunsets. You're seeing beautiful sunsets every day. Film your sunsets, put them on. Get a YouTube following. Get people to see what they can come to when we're through this. So I thought, well, I've got nothing else to do. So I did, and I started a little YouTube channel. And then when people could come back, instead of putting paper into their accommodation, we made a video to welcome them before they came. We make video for the day boats, and people would arrive on holiday and they'd be like, hi Mary, how are you? And I think, do I know you? And they go, how's Simon, how's Nate getting on? I'd be like, I'm sure, because I think I've got a dreadful memory sometimes for people, but I'm normally quite good with faces. I don't recognise you. And of course I didn't know them at all, but they'd seen all of our welcome videos, they'd read all the information, they'd been on our YouTube channel, and they felt like they knew us already, And Simon said, people come up to him and says, how's the engine getting on, Simon? And he's like, who are they? Who is she? Is my wife going to kill me? I don't know who this woman is. And it'd just be someone who's watched one of the YouTube things about his engine online. So it makes, I think people nowadays want to feel part of something. They want to feel that they belong. They want to turn up on holiday feeling confident that they know what they're going to do, and that there's things that they can get to, and because you can go on holiday and you can spend the first 2 days trying to work out what to do, and then you've lost half of your holiday sorting it out. So if you can go somewhere where they give you loads of information in advance, they suggest all the things you should book before you get there, you get on holiday, and it's kind of relaxing because everything's all, you've done it. You've just got to enjoy your time.
Yeah. And it is that feeling of belonging. And I think that people want to go somewhere that they feel they can belong. They feel they know you. They feel they know the business, and they want to see the business succeed, whether it's getting an engine that hasn't worked for a while working, or whether it's actually, seeing some of the sustainability things that you've been bringing in and you're rewilding. And so how has that gone? Rewilding, it's an area of grass that you haven't cut, isn't it?
It is an area of grass that we haven't cut. And if you read our TripAdvisor reviews, you'll find someone said that we're too lazy to cut the grass. And we thought, oh dear, that's a bit of a damning statement. So but it's great when someone says something like that. That's what I mean. Negativity is great to make positivity. So we're like, well, why do they think we're too lazy? So we made some of those wonderful signs that everyone sees now. Excuse the weeds, we're feeding the bees. And we've put signs up explaining to people why you're doing what you're doing. And it's, I mean, Beccles and the River Waveney around this part is absolutely beautiful. It's very different to the river on the northern end of the Broads. It's not as reedy. It's got different sorts of wildlife. There's a stretch of river that the kingfishers live on. So, you know, if you've never seen a kingfisher and you come on holiday here, you're likely to see a kingfisher. We've got one that lives in the basin. We've got otters that live in basin. We've got our swans that live in the basin. You know, and what we've noticed with the rewilding and regrowing is the amount of dragonflies that have appear has more than quadrupled. We used to get a few, but when it's dragonfly season, we get loads and loads. We're beginning to see bees coming back. We're seeing a lot more insects appearing, and as a result, other wildlife come in and come through. I mean, the amount of reed warblers in the reeds at the moment is crazy. Loads of really diddy baby reed warblers, and so we're having a bit of a job trying to keep the cats away from the reeds. But it's makes a major difference. You think, you know, there's the whole food chain that's there for a reason. And if you get rid of an aspect of it, then that aspect of wildlife can't carry on existing. Yeah. So what we try and do is educate people, because we feel really privileged that we've, you know, for less than we could have bought a mooring in London, we've bought a part of the Broads National Park. The river is beautiful. I can't tell you the difference in the river here to the river. You know, when we lived in the Thames, I know what's his face, David Williams, went swimming by one time. He did that famous swim down the Thames. Yeah. And I thought, God, that's really brave, because it's so dirty and you can't see anything but brown. I think, I don't know if I'd be swimming in there, but good on you. You know, he did a great thing. And we came here and you look in the water and you can just see to the bottom of the river. You can see the fish, you can see the plants, you can see everything. It's incredible. So it is a beautiful, beautiful river. And we know that we're like custodians. We have to look after it. And we have to make sure that we leave something behind for future generations that's in as good a condition as when we got it, if not better. And our aspiration is to leave it better than we found it, and leave it in a way that, you know, will serve generations in the future really well.
Yeah. And it is that sort of mix of creating a space, however small, that all of us can do. And I was teasing about the just leave the grass uncut, but it is an educational thing whereby you do have to turn around and say, well, actually, this is done deliberately. It's not just a mess, but over time, nature takes over. It creates the right mix of plants within there. Everything in there starts to then breed, and then it brings in the predators to that then brings in predators to that, and the whole mix then sort of blends in. As you say, we are just custodians, and so sustainability and plastics and everything else, how's that changed in your business over the 5 years that you've been, you know, leading from the front?
Well, when we arrived here, there was no recycling. It was just all waste, and it was all just thrown out generally, which we were surprised about, because everywhere we've lived, there's always been recycling. And Simon's from New Zealand, where everything is recycled, because he jokes, it takes so long for anything to get to New Zealand. You've got to recycle it because it might be forever till you get another one. But it's made him very aware of, you know, repurpose, reuse, and he made me more aware of recycling when I met him. And then we came here and it was like, well, there isn't any. So then we had to find a waste company that would do recycling. And we ended up with different contracts for different bits of recycling, general and glass. And it was actually, I thought, getting people to come and take recycling, that's going to be really easy. It was actually the biggest problem. Trying to find someone to take glass recycling 5, 6 years ago from here was quite a tricky thing to achieve. Yeah. So that was our first big hurdle. But then no one takes soft plastics. You know, they take all of this, but not plastic bags, not this, not that, not the other. And loads of things come in soft plastic. And we've tried to repurpose some of our houseboats. We've re-insulated them, and we've used big sheets of plastic that the canoes came in to hold some of the insulation in. So they're being reused for something that will last for some time. But we still have a mountain of plastic that builds up. And eventually, after some searching, I found a company called The First Mile, and their mission is to keep the first mile of the ocean plastic free. And they'll come when I phone them once a year, and they'll guarantee none of the soft plastics will go into any landfill. So we use that. But I've recently heard of a company even more locally that may very well do the same thing. So I'm about to make contact to them, because they're a good solution, but it's still eco-wise, because they're so far away. It's probably not the best solution. If this local company can do the same thing, then I may be supporting somebody differently soon.
Yeah,
So that's,
that is
I'm always looking for better solutions.
yeah, that is the challenge, isn't it? And your customer base, are you now finding that people are expecting you to be greener?
Yeah, we are. In fact, I added a customer avatar last year called Ophelia the Planet Saver, because we find we've got quite a lot of different customers who are coming. And when you find you've got a certain sort coming all the time, then you're attracting them. So you might as well make an avatar and really work harder to attract them. And we
Yeah.
had a bat lady come the other year who stayed on a houseboat. And apparently we have a very rare breed of bats around this area of the Broads. And she was thrilled, and she was tweeting us and twittering us all over the place about the bats that we didn't even know we had. So that was really good, and that promoted it. And people are very, coming in electric cars, interested in making sure that things stay green. And they all say when they arrive, well, we've read your information, we've seen what you said, and don't worry, we're not going to use anything but your products when we go into them. And some of them even go home saying, oh, we like your products. What are they called? Where can we get hold of them? So yeah, I think we do. And people are more aware and want to be green. And a lot of them say, oh, we do all this recycling at home, so it's good to be able to do it on holiday and not have to take it home in the car with us to do it, because we hate putting it without recycling it. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah. It's definitely a trend that is gaining momentum and certainly being driven forward. And so you talked about customer experiences and what's happening now. For those people who are going to listen to this in sort of almost real time in spring 2023, you've actually been all over the papers, you've been on the TV, all as a result of something that actually took place over a year ago, but has just been discovered, which was on your day boats, you've actually banned your customers taking alcohol on board the boats. How did that come about?
Yeah.
And how has it changed things?
It came about because I guess it was a process of elimination of what was going to work. We like all tourism businesses, we have seasonal staff of all ages, and some of our staff are 16, 17, and some are older. And people would come back in and they'd take the boat out, and they'd come back in and they would be really, really drunk driving a boat, which I think is dangerous. Other customers would come back and they'd complain. Some group of customers came back in once, and guy was about to throw a woman in the river with a vodka bottle in her hand, and I was like, put her down now. And they were really shocked, and they put her down. I said, put all the glass in the bin and put your buoyancy aids over there. And so anyway, they went up to see Simon. They said, we want to make a complaint about the lady over there. She spoke to us like we were children at school. And he said, that's because she is a head teacher. And they were like, oh. And he said, she probably didn't like your behaviour. And they were like, oh. So they kind of went away with it. And he said, I'm not going to ask her to apologise, because actually we didn't like your behaviour. So they went away with their tail between their legs a bit. But the other customers said, oh, thank God. We just had the worst time following that boat. They've been awful, and they've been, just behaviour that you just don't want to see. And they had children in the boat. So after them, we had a little think about, and we decided what we'd say was the driver of the boat has to stay under the legal limit for driving, and you could only take a reasonable amount of alcohol on the boat. Then we had the whole conversation with people about what's my reasonable, what's your reasonable, and people saying, well, I can drink 3 bottles of vodka and 62 cans of beer and I'm fine to drive a car. Not my problem if you're not. That's reasonable for me. And you're like, oh, and it's not all, but it's a few. And then we're sort of asking our staff to manage a situation that is very grey, and should they or shouldn't they? And then we had a group who were just so abusive. They damaged one of the day boats. And then we saw people with boats banging into children who were sailing or canoeing or kayaking. And we just thought, what, this is an accident waiting to happen. And we don't want on our consciousness that a child was hurt or somebody had a bad injury because a boat we hired to people was completely out of order and people were too drunk. We just thought, we don't want that. We need to do something about that. So we just said, you can't take alcohol on the boats, because we're an hour away from an amazing pub where people can go and have a drink. We're not saying when you get there you can't have a drink. We're just saying you can't take crates of beer and bottles of vodka and bottles of wine on the boat with you. And it's the same, if you hired a car, you wouldn't hire a car, put a 6-pack on the seat and drive along supping your beer as you're going down the motorway at 80 mile an hour. Only, you've got little control of a boat because you haven't even got a brake. You've got to work with the wave and the tides and the water. So you've got to think about what you're doing. So we banned it. We said no, and we check people's bags when they go out, and if they've got alcohol in them, we ask them to leave them in the car. If they're really unhappy with it, we say, you have your money back. We'd rather you didn't go out than you were unhappy, and it's not what you want, but we don't want you drinking out like that on our boats. And this year we've added it into our booking flow. Well, we added it in at the middle of last year, so it's really clear. You can't actually book a boat without reading that statement, so you know. So we've tried to make it really, really clear. And I think because of what's gone on in Amsterdam, people were sort of asking what difference we've made. If we made, what do we do about alcohol on our boats? And I just said, well, we don't let people bring alcohol on our boats. And they were like, oh, and that's where it kind of took a momentum of its own this spring and ended up everywhere. Yeah. But it is just day boats, overnight boats we don't do. And our overnight accommodation is different. If you're on holiday overnight, of course you can have a glass of wine watching the sunset and all the rest of it. It's just, if you're going out on a day boat and your sole purpose is to go out and get drunk on a day boat, then probably we're not the people for you, because we don't think that's fair on other river users.
As you say, you're not banning the consumption. You're just banning the excess consumption on board the boat. They can go and have a nice beer in a beer garden, and then tootle their way back and enjoy it without making a noise and nuisance for other people.
And a lot of people have said thank you. One of our staff members has worked here for longer than we've been here. He's been through every single change we've done, and he's still here, which is great. And he said that there's quality of customer coming through, as in terms of customer problems. He said, people, when they've had too much to drink, will behave in a way that they would be embarrassed about when they were sober. And he just said, we don't get so much of that anymore. And that he feels the changes we've made have been good, because it's kind of used to sort of dread the end of a weekend day and having to deal with all these people, whereas now it's like everyone's coming back in and they've had a nice day and they're all happy and we're all happy and everything ends lovely.
Yeah, and of course they're coming back to a place where people are staying and have made their home for a week or a weekend. So again, they're coming into an area that some people are cherishing the peace and quiet of. Change seems to be a common denominator through everything that you've done. Challenging career in teaching, and then change, and then change and change again throughout. I mean, you did I think your dissertation was on change management, so that's obviously stood you in good stead. So at this time in our podcast, what we do is we ask a question. So I don't know whether it's going to be linked to change or not, but what would you actually say is your important rule of business?
Our important rule of business is just, do try change, take a risk. And if it doesn't work, then you've learned something from it. Just learn from every opportunity. Staying the same isn't a good thing. So always try, take a risk, make a change, listen and make a change.
What a great rule of business. But you came in to the sector going, I don't want to come into the sector, and you're clearly enjoying it. What would you say to somebody who's thinking of coming into tourism, leisure, hospitality, either at the start of a career or midway through their working lives? What message would you give them?
I'd say, well, go for it, try it, give it a whirl, because one of the things I've found in tourism and hospitality is you do see people at their best. They're on holiday, they want to have a nice time. You're going to see the best of humanity. And it's actually, half the time it doesn't feel like work. It's just enjoyment and helping people enjoy themselves. So try it, enjoy it, maybe experience it, do some research, think about this. Honestly, there's such a breadth of jobs in hospitality and tourism that you could do anything almost. What is it you love to do? And then go and find the job that you love to do that allows you to do that, and really, push it. Don't expect to become a multimillionaire overnight, but do expect to have a really, really good quality of life, really good, good sort of healthy work-life balance. Yes, some of the seasons and some of the hours are long, but you can choose when you can take some time off and you can put some time back into yourself. And it's a nice place to be when you see people who are happy. And I would say 99% of the time we deal with happy people who want to have a good time. And it is such a difference from working in a field where you just see the worst of people. So, yeah, I'd say give it a whirl, give it a go. You've got nothing to lose.
What a brilliant point to end on. Mary, thank you ever so much. I really enjoyed this chat. Found it fascinating, and we could keep talking all day. But for now, thank you ever so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this week's Tourism Business Chat. For more from the Insight series, including webinars and our latest blog posts on all things business, you can find us at larking-gowan.co.uk.